Welcome, everybody, to our group therapy for customer success leaders. This is actually the first one we've done in our series for customer success leaders. And let me just give you a little background on why we're doing this today and why we've selected this topic. It's actually kind of interesting because about a year ago, we did a survey of customer marketing professionals to really understand how they interact and engage with customer success people. And what we learned is that there's a big gap between the two functions in that, and it was caused by the fact that customer marketers would be going to customer success saying, how can you help me today? What customer do you have that I can do a case study with? And then customer success people would be saying, all you ever do is come to me looking for customers, and I need to protect them because we just can't keep going after all these customers and us begging for favors. And so, but something's interesting has happened in the last couple of months as we've been talking to more customer success leaders. We're realizing that rather than wanting to kind of keep customer marketing and advocacy at an arm's length from their customers, the forward-thinking ones are really starting to embrace advocacy and figure out, in some cases, even own advocacy, as you will hear on this webcast today. And so given that, we wanted to really pull together customer success leaders to hear from you, and then also let you hear from some customer success leading professionals who have already embraced advocacy, really recognize the importance that it can have. And before I introduce our group therapy panelists today, let me just do a quick intro here. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Customer X community, we're about 5 years old, and we were formed. The X is the wild card, so it's for customer marketing, advocacy, success, experience, engagement, reference professionals, people that have customer in their title. And our mission here is to elevate the profession, right? Elevate the Customer X roles in the organizations by helping and inspiring and showing people how to connect their work to the strategic growth initiatives that their C-level executives care the most about. And in turn Customer X roles into a career path to the C-suite themselves. Big lofty goal there, but I think we're making some progress doing that. And just wanted to let you know that if you're interested in this topic today and others like this, make sure that you know about the Customer XCon conference coming up October 17th and 18th in Boston. You can register at customerxcon.com, and we'll have lots of topics for customer success leaders and customer marketing leaders. And we'll be talking about the intersection of the two, which is a very interesting space. So with that, why don't I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and we'll go left to right on the screen. So let's start with you, Brittany. Just give us a little background of who you are and what you do.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Brittany Pace. I am the VP of Customer Experience at Litho. We're a creative operations platform helping marketing and creative teams orchestrate and distribute and maximize the assets that they create. And my role in leading customer experience at the organization, I manage everything post-sale. So that includes implementation, customer success, support, education, renewals, cross-sells, expansions, and customer marketing. So this is a really exciting topic for me. I'm very passionate about advocacy in general, and this being something that squarely fits in the world of customer success. So excited to get the conversation going.
All right. We're going to come back to you at some point to understand how you got to that point where you actually own customer marketing and advocacy, because that's not the norm, but I know you have an argument for why it makes so much sense.
Absolutely.
So Dana, tell us who you are.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I'm Dana Alvarenga. I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience at Slap5. And yes, I'm here to really, usually I'm on the other seat, on Jeff's seat, and we decided to flip the script here a bit and bring my insights and my experience of running customer experience, customer success, onboarding, education, enablement, all those hats that Brittany was mentioning as well as customer marketing. And what I've seen from my work and then the customers that I work with of these sometimes silos between customer success and advocacy and customer marketing, and how there's opportunity to bring those together, and what you can do with the power of advocacy from a customer success perspective.
Right. And Julio. I want to, and you're not the Julio Franco, the famous athlete, right? You're the other Julio. So tell us who you
He's
are.
he's my uncle. We can talk about that later, Jeff. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
He's not actually my uncle. Hi everybody. My name is Julio Franco, not the athlete. I'm a chief customer officer for a company called Zappy. We are a consumer insights platform. We basically do survey-based research to make sure that large organizations can keep their customers at the center of what they do. And my job is to keep the customers at the center of what we do. Within my role, I also own everything post-sale. So that is implementation, customer success, professional services, and recently also support. So I'm learning quite a bit from support. Consumer marketing, customer marketing is not something within my realm, but I have really good partners in that front. So it works really, really well for me.
All right, that's great. And then Sean, you've got a unique perspective. You've been working with multiple companies at a time. So tell us how that is. Tell us what you do.
Sean Rydell, I am the owner and founder of Fractional Customer Success, which is a fractional consulting business that helps CS leaders implement the customer success programs that we identify as places they need to work on and create foundational elements. The difference between what I do and typical consultants is I just don't tell you that you have a cavity. I actually help you fix the cavity. So I'm not going to create a gap list for you and then move on. I've got a long history in the entire customer success space, and I'm talking customer success from lead to cash, not just the post-sales transaction, but that entire cycle of when they become a prospect all the way through when they actually do the retention. And I work across a bunch of different clients. So I get to see the large enterprises straddling on-premise to SaaS, as well as the startups that are just starting to try and create customer advocates with the very limited customer bases that they have. So I bring a bit of a contrarian point of view, and I hope some of you find it humorous as well as thought-provoking. Yes,
we're gonna get some of those contrarian opinions out of you as we go through this. Before we actually jump in though and start the dialogue, I know we invited customer success leaders to this. We also invited some customer marketing leaders, even though we're taking the perspective on this one of customer success. But I think it's awesome that people want to hear what the other side is thinking. And so, but what I'd really like to do now is just run a quick poll to understand the involvement in your company that customer success has with customer marketing and advocacy. And as you can see here, I've got kind of the spectrum, starting with customer success owns the customer marketing and advocacy function, down to maybe they don't own it, but they have goals for creating and engaging advocates, down to maybe they don't have goals, but they do actually proactively nominate customers. Maybe you don't go that far, but you do respond when you're asked for help. Maybe you're at the point where you don't actually respond, you kind of protect your customers, or you have no involvement. And so can everybody see this poll? Is it being displayed?
It is, yeah, I can see it, maybe because I'm
okay. All right, I didn't see any progress yet happening.
It's up.
But if people could just vote, if it lets, make sure it lets you vote.
Get a couple more in there, we'll be over 70% voted.
Okay.
All right, yeah, I would say share results.
Okay, and can you see the shared results, Dana?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you just describe what we see, because to me it's still showing the actual poll.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so the leader responds when asked for help with identifying and engaging advocates. Kind of expected that. And the next one after that is customer success proactively nominates customers for the advocacy program. But there's votes for everything, but the leader is the respond when asked for help.
Okay, so it's fair to say that we have a bell curve, right? That the bulk of the people are in the middle. And I'm not surprised at all. That's consistent with conversations that we have where people are. And I know that the reason why we're doing this webcast today is because we know that there's an aspiration on both sides for this to be moving up or maybe moving to the right direction of this bell curve. So with that, let me just close the poll. And where I'd like to start with the panel is we start with the why, right? I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. Is anybody else like Simon Sinek? Start with why. Why is it important for the customer success teams to play a bigger role in advocacy? And we're not going to get real specific into what role they should be playing, because we're going to get into a little more of the details around how you make it happen. But if you start with the why don't we go in the opposite direction of our intros? Sean, tell us why it's so important now, even from the macro perspective, because I know the economy is impacting the ratio of customer success managers to customers in the wrong direction. I know customer success is under the gun to do more with less continuously. And at the same time, it's never been more important to have customer proof and have your advocates out there, or to be generating more revenue from your existing customers. And so I'd love to hear from each of you. Why is it so important now to start to bridge this gap and for customer success to play a bigger role with customer marketing and advocacy?
Yeah, that phrase "do more with less" is kind of an antithesis of customer success, right? When you say do more with less, you're actually going to end up doing less with less when it comes to being able to have that human-to-human interaction with your customers on the CS side. I think for me, what's most important in these macroeconomic conditions is the fact that the best SaaS companies can probably get a 1-to-5 ratio out of new customers from references. So if you've got 5 customers, one of them is going to be able to bring you somebody new. And that's in the best SaaS companies. And ultimately, that is the primary goal of advocacy. Yes, we want our customers to love us. Yes, we want to retain them. Yes, we want them to get to buy more stuff. But ultimately, we want them to sell for us. And in these macroeconomic conditions, the more of our customers we can get selling for us is absolutely doing more with less. It extends the reach of the customer success organization to outside of the customers that they're looking at. Ultimately, I think that customer success is a story about reciprocity. And if you're a big fan of Robert Cialdini, who is probably the most well-known person around the power of influence and persuasion, he'll tell you that when somebody gives you something, there is this automatic trigger for you to want to give something back. And the key to advocacy is helping your customers understand that you're giving them something so that they want to give something back. And that's kind of where I approach this entire advocacy with customers from.
That's great. Yeah. Julio, how about you, from your perspective? Why is the time now to bridge these functions to better embrace advocacy on the customer success side?
So I actually don't think that the time is now. The time was years ago.
Yes. Good point. Good point.
It's linked to what Sean was referring to, and that is something that we in our business experience. I'll give you an example. A customer in Europe came to us last week and said, "I just met one of your customers at a conference that, it was an industry conference, and they just told me all the great things that they're doing with you. I want to replicate that." That is an example of unharnessed advocacy that we see a lot of, and we've seen our business grow because our customers are telling their friends the great things that they're doing with us. So the way that we organize it within our function is we basically have 4 pillars. We talk about value. We need to deliver value to our customers, which will make sure that they have a healthy relationship with us. Once you provide that, then they will tell their friends. And that's where we generate that advocacy. And then that advocacy generates growth. It's something that we actively work on. And it's had a really good result for us from a business perspective. Now, in addition to that, our job is to make our customers successful. And that success sometimes means they want to increase their personal profile. They want to get promoted. And those moments of advocacy actually help them do that. It's not just give us a quote, but sometimes it's a case study. Sometimes is let's make sure that we have a joint conference talk, and that helps them elevate as well. So there is that reciprocity that Sean is referring to, where by doing that, we help them increase their personal brand, while at the same time, they help us drive social proof and help grow our company.
And that's such a good point, Julio, I mean, and when I'm talking to my clients about engaging their customers, they oftentimes feel like, oh my God, we're just begging for a big favor here, not realizing that customers oftentimes want to advocate because they're building their own reputation, they're demonstrating their own thought leadership. And so,
Yeah.
so is that recognition, like, does that persist now within your customer success team that that yes, we're actually helping them, not bothering them or burdening them?
We're explicit about it. We tell them that we want to make them famous. We use that phrase often enough with our customers and say, if that is what you want, we're here to help. And that's where a link with our marketing team is really, really important, because they make it very easy for our customers.
Yep.
They are also trying to do more with less, and they are overwhelmed by, how do I do this? Sometimes let's talk about like speaking at a conference. They've never done that before. So we try to make it as easy for them as possible. And that helps them as well. So it's a win-win. Right.
Absolutely. And then Brittany, you said something interesting on one of our prior conversations. I mean, many interesting things, but one of them was that you view advocacy as being one of the strongest drivers of retention, right? As opposed to the other way around, right? Advocacy comes at the end of the whole process, right? We're pushing our clients up the mountain, making them successful, and then it's only when been with us for 2 years, amazing, getting this amazing value, now we have permission to ask them to be advocates, right? So tell us a little bit about your views on why it's so important, and even tell us like how it came to be that you have advocacy within your purview.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's really interesting that Sean and Julio mentioned is, yes, it helps the business, and customer success should be that great business partner and be viewed as that, not just that cost center that's taking up all the business resources, but actually fueling the rest of the business. And that's important. But sometimes, as I've seen with my own customer success teams, they need to also understand what's in it for them. If they start to focus on advocacy, and we want to get them out of a place of just being reactive and fueling the asks and getting more proactive. How do we do that? And that's by really kind of that ultimate change management of what's the value going to be for them, why for them. And so there are two things, in the top of my mind that immediately come. First is, if we're doing all the right things, as Julio mentioned, right? We're delivering the value, we're making it easy to do business with us, we're promoting adoption, the breadth and depth of the solutions we have, we're going to be solving their problems, and we're going to be helping them deliver the outcomes that they're seeking. Advocacy is the proof that you have reached that level. You can't get to advocacy without delivering outcomes, and you can't deliver those outcomes without doing the rest of the customer journey correctly. And so when you're thinking about the end result, the outcomes, having that moment of advocacy is real proof that you've gotten there, and you've gotten there in such a great way that they're willing to speak publicly about it, which is amazing. The second thing that we've seen as we've looked at our own data, and I know churn is probably on top of everyone's mind, right? In this economic climate, what are the biggest drivers of retention? What are the biggest predictors? I see myself in my seat as one of my key roles is creating predictability for the business so that they can make decisions financially of how to move forward. And a lot of that is resting on churn and what we think we're going to be able to retain. And so one of the things that we found from our own data is when we have customers that are advocating for us one time a year, they are sticking around. They are loyal. And so, and then there's effect, right? We've had advocates where maybe we had a key champion, we got that champion promoted, right? That's the goal. We want to make them look really, really good at their job. And then they leave. And then we haven't had that same luck with the same champion. The business becomes at risk again, right? But if we can keep that ongoing motion of advocacy year over year, we have found that 100% of those customers will continue to renew with us. So I think that's a really powerful statistic that we found.
And Brittany, you found that advocacy is a better predictor of retention even than customer sat surveys or NPS scores, right? Can
absolutely.
you touch on that a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys have heard or follow Greg Danes. He's done a lot of work into the correlation of the data, but what's going to be predicting to churn, what has effects, what doesn't have effects. NPS and CSAT, that's a great predictor, a litmus test of experience. It allows us to engage with the customers. I actually think anytime a customer engages with you, even if it's a detractor, that's a good thing, because that means that they actually want to engage and are sharing their thoughts with you. There's an open door that they're cracking to come on in, and that's an indicator of health, in my opinion. But advocacy on the other end is, this customer has received those outcomes and they are publicly talking about them. That's a level of trust externally that you're never going to get from an internal survey that you send to a customer. So just by the nature of them saying in a private conversation to another colleague, in a public G2 review, in a case study they do with you, that is an indicator of trust and loyalty that you'll never get from an internal survey or an internal conversation with a CSM.
Oh, that's great. And then Dana, you're in a very interesting position because you serve customer marketers, but you play a customer success role in your own profession. So given that you're bridging the two as well, why do you see them coming together to be so important in terms of the outcomes that we're trying to deliver?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously advocacy is all about that relationship, and that's the key that builds, again, like Brittany was mentioning, that trust. If the customers become that advocate, they are able to become that thought leader. We call them the rock star in the space, to showcase what they're doing, but then they can take it on in their career. They can take it to a new role. I mean, customer marketers tend to be an industry, they move around a lot. Same like customer success. So they'll bring you on to the next place because you've built them as an advocate, not their company. You're showcasing them and what they've done, so they can take that transferable anywhere that they go. And the other aspect is you're not waiting to make these people advocates. Right off the bat, you're bringing in these customers that you see as the thought leaders. So you're inviting them into, how I position it in our best practices, we invite them into the advocacy program right when they begin. Tell us what you want to do, and then continue to ask them, what else do you want to do as they progress with us? But it's not waiting till the customers onboarded or they're a year into the product or they've already signed the renewal contract. You're letting them know, we think you're amazing already, and join this program and showcase what you can do and grow with us in this advocacy program. So I think that is a great approach that has helped, definitely.
And that's such an important point that I want to reinforce too, is that the understanding of what is advocacy, right? Because a lot of people, especially on the customer success side, feel like you can't even approach a customer about saying anything publicly until they've been with us for 2 years, at least. They're getting off the charts ROI. There's no renewal discussion going on. There's no customer support issue going on. But when is that ever the case, right? When do you ever have that nirvana state? But then on the flip side of it, sometimes the best insights to get from a customer to help other buyers who are considering buying from you are things like, how did you go about evaluating and comparing the different options you have? Or even further upstream, how did you get everybody in your company on board with the decision to make a change, right? And so some of those insights are best gotten right at the very beginning. And so advocacy doesn't just have to be shilling for you about this amazing ROI they've gotten, or gathering these happy quotes, but it can really align with what buyers want to know. And this is a big interest of mine, is doing buyer research, buyer persona research. So much of what buyers want to know, they want to hear from customers. And so much of it has to do with the change management aspects of your solution versus your features and functions. So I think that's actually a good segue as well into making sure that the customer success leaders on this webinar have a good understanding of what advocacy is and what the potential is of what companies or customers can do for you. And so one of the things, we've coined the term a couple of years ago, like the random acts of advocacy. So a lot of companies, they either perceive advocacy just to be PR quotes and case studies, right? And maybe some referrals. And so they really underappreciate the potential that customers can play as advocates. And then, or they're coming from an environment that we call random acts of advocacy, where it's just nothing happens until the PR team is looking for a quote, or product marketing is looking for a couple of beta customers. Then this whole process starts to say, who do we got? Who do we got? Who knows them, and how do we get them? So how do we shift that? How do we get people to recognize that you can be actually proactive? You could be having a talent pool of customers in a program. And maybe Sean, you mentioned once, if you could start with the I guess the CEO call you got at 10:30 at night one time. Can you tell that story?
Yes. Oh my gosh, my advocacy epiphany.
Okay.
So I was of the opinion as well that advocacy was an awkward conversation that you had later in the customer journey, and you asked for a quote, or you asked for a case study, or you asked for a video, and it was always a difficult conversation. When I took over strategy and programs at a past life, I had gotten a call on a Sunday night at 10:30 from the CEO. And you always take that call, right? As much as the LinkedIn powers that be will tell you, don't take that call. No, you take that call. And the panic was that there was an industry event that was going to be happening on Wednesday of that week. And the CEO, who had somebody to guest speak with him on our behalf, had backed out. So he needed another person to come speak at that industry event, and he needed it fast. And in his chief of staff's cursory looking over of the CRM, they couldn't find anybody. So I was tasked with two things in that moment. One was to find him the advocate, and two was to fix the problem. And what I found in fixing the problem is that advocacy, our struggles with advocacy were because of our lack of executive engagement post-sale. We were giving up that executive relationship because of the length of the implementation cycle, and we were allowing sales to hang on to that person. And you'll find as a customer success leader that as long as sales holds on to that executive sponsor, it undermines everything customer success is trying to do. So what we set out to do was create an executive engagement program where customer success was inserted into the sales cycle so that they could begin to build that trust, and they could begin to position those advocacy conversations as early as the sales cycle. And by preparing customers for that reciprocity, it wasn't necessarily even a conversation about advocacy after that. It was a, how can I help you? The customer saying, what do you got coming up? Where can I help you guys? Where can I get my name out there? So by moving into the sales cycle, holding on to that executive engagement, we found that advocacy became just natural.
Right. And once again, it's that recognition that customers are willing to, they just don't know how, right? And so, yeah, the earlier you start the conversation, the better.
And that was part two of the program. Part two of the program was treating each advocacy event as a product. So laying out what exactly is the expectation for this thing, almost a playbook about a use case, or a playbook about a video, or a playbook about an industry event. And being transparent with customers about, here are the expectations if this is the kind of thing you want to go do. It was never forced. It was always voluntary. But when they understand what the advocate proposal is, they're far more willing to engage. Whereas to just ask them, would you do a quote for us? Well, what's that mean? How long does it last? Where does it go? Who sees it? Right? All of that becomes part of the product description so that customers then know, oh, this is what it means to be this kind of an advocate.
Right. Right. And so let's see, anybody else on the panel, do you have an advocacy epiphany? I love that expression, that phrase. What was your advocacy epiphany?
So I'll share a little bit about how we operationalized advocacy at Litho and helped the CSMs really make it more proactive, and also allowed the whole organization to understand how they could take advantage of these advocacy moments as well. We had similar situation, Sean, where when I came over into the CX part of the world, the CSMs were really kind of under fire, right? There was a lot of last minute asks, sales coming and like harassing them at the desks. They need a reference call, or marketing needing that customer for the event last minute. And the CSMs would often then go immediately to like the customers they had the best relationships with. because that's who they knew would be able to call and that response immediately. So then we ended up going again and again and again to the same customers, who then started to get upset because they have real jobs to do, and that's not promoting Litho. And so we knew we had a little bit of a problem. We didn't know how often we were fulfilling these asks. We didn't know who and how many times we were going to these customers. And so we started to track what these advocacy moments are. And I do believe advocacy is any time a customer is publicly talking about your product or service in a positive way. That could be even on a knowledge exchange call. It could be on an analyst call. It doesn't have to be something like a testimonial or a case study or an event, right? It can be very, very casual, but it's public. And so we started to track these. Anytime the CSM would know what was happening, they would put it into our system and we would start to collect data on it. And the other ask that I had from my ops person was, I want to see all of the customers. I want to see their industry. I want to see their health score, anyone that we believe we can tap into for advocacy moments, so that anybody in sales, anybody in marketing, if they have a goal that they want to achieve and they want to bring an advocate, a potential advocate into it, they have a full menu of our customers that we know are healthy, that we know are getting value, that we know what industry they're in, the size of the business, the location of the business, et cetera. And we can pull them up really easily, and nobody is handcuffed for that information, right? We've completely democratized that menu. In addition, they come off of that menu if they've been over asked. So if they've done 2 advocacy events in the last 180 days, they're gone. They're no longer an option to feed into, so that we stop abusing our customers and start really sharing the Litho love with all of our customers. And then the last thing is that the CSMs have the ultimate power card. So if they don't want a customer to appear on the list, they get to yank them. So maybe it's a customer that's actually getting a lot of value, but they're pretty mean, or we have a bad relationship with them, or they're going through some kind of change that we don't want to touch them. They get to pull them out. And so that has helped in a couple of ways. It's helped in that sales and marketing can proactively go and have a more focused, strategic conversation with the CSM when they want to have an advocacy moment. And it also means, in a reactive way, let's say we're even battling a risk scenario in CS, and we are trying to help a customer understand how to solve a challenge they have. We can then look in our own book and say, ooh, there's a customer in this industry, similar size, that we can connect together, and they can have that conversation about how to solve that problem. So that's it sounds complex, but it actually was a really simple thing for us to institute from a process perspective that helped the business and helped our CS team as well.
And it sounds like a key to it, Brittany, is that you're giving the CSM still control, so they don't feel like they're being taken out of the process, while also giving customers that flexibility to pick and choose what they like.
Exactly.
And Dana, maybe if you could talk a little bit about sort of the Chinese menu approach, and really building that profile of the customer that helps make sure that you're presenting them with the right opportunities that they want to participate in. I know you have some opinions there.
Yeah, and I love the involvement of sales and CS of what you were just saying, Brittany. So I was going to do the emoji clap thing there, but we need more people saying that and getting CS to understand it's more than just a quote that you're getting. It's so much more value. So yeah, take a similar approach of, again, right when customers are onboarded, they're provided a form where it's what acts of advocacy are you interested in participating in, and it's ranging from provide a quote to just be part of a partner design session, all the way to speaking at an event, be on a webinar, all different options, virtual, in person, varying and different levels of commitment. And then also it's a two-way exchange of value where they're getting something out of it and we, the company, are getting something out of it, because that's important. A lot of old school methodology around advocacy and acts of advocacy are all on the company and marketing speak, and we just need this quote, and it doesn't even highlight the person. It might have the logo and you don't even know who said it. Maybe their words are in their title and their name is in small little font, but the logo's huge. This is showcasing them, the customer, the advocate, your future advocate, your current advocate. So giving them that option. And then when it comes to the time when we're looking for a webinar or we're running a conference or we need a reference call, we're able to quickly filter through and search what industry, similar like what Brittany was mentioning, we can filter what industry, what size, who said they wanted to do this, who wanted this opportunity, and then they expect and they're excited to be asked. I'm not going and begging. I'm not saying, here's a $25 gift card. Can you do this? They are welcoming the ask. They're excited. When can I do it? What do you need from me? Do you need anything else? If it's a reference call, speaking, and they thank me afterwards, no matter what type of active advocacy it is. I get emails right after before I can even send my thank you. If it's a webinar, thank you so much for including me, asking, thinking about me. And then it's the, again, not that upfront bribery of do this for this. We do that unexpected thank you gift afterwards. I still want to thank them. I appreciate taking the time and doing it. Give that thank you gift after, but that's not the upfront ask of it, because they raised their hand. They want to be given this opportunity again. So you're following through on that, which you can't always do a lot in the customer facing world, following through on things. It's hard, product updates, enhancements, but you can follow through on giving them an opportunity to share their voice. So.
Yeah. And it's such an important point. We've talked a lot about the power of reciprocity and the two-way exchange of value. So I want to come back in just a minute to that and see if we can get some specific examples for you guys of how some customers have benefited. But before we do that, I just want to make sure, Julio, I know your advocacy epiphany was probably many years ago. That's so long ago you probably forgot. But did you have an epiphany when you realized, oh my God, advocacy is not a dirty word? I mean, it's actually a strategic growth driver.
I don't think that I had the epiphany because I frankly always saw it that way.
I figured. Yep.
The epiphany that we had was that we were not harnessing it. And then we went back and we looked at the data and we understood a lot of the growth in this company and prior companies, that it all came from people that had a great experience with us and they just wanted to share that, but we were not harnessing it. So one of the things that we started to do was, hey, to our customer success team, just ask. We used to just like take moments of delight from a customer and move on. So a customer would come in and would have a great experience, would say, oh my gosh, this is absolutely great. I can't believe this happened. And then we would just like move on and not ask the customer a few questions. Say, tell me more about it. Why is it so impactful? And then, are you willing to tell others about it within your company, within other companies? And for the most part, they'll say yes, because, believe it or not, people would like to help people. So you just give them the opportunity for that and they'll just take the chance. So for us, it was more of a, holy crap, we're really not harnessing this as well as we could. We knew it was there. We just needed to do a better job at harnessing it.
Oh, that's such a great point. And so I think that is a nice segue to our third topic about what's in it for the customer. And so, like I said, we've talked about a lot of examples. I know, we struggle. Oh, actually, when I look into a lot of questions that are asked in discussion forums or communities, a lot of times you'll hear people that will say, how much do others pay for a peer review? Or how much do others pay for a reference call? Or how expensive a gift do you give somebody for this or offer up front for this or that? And so I know there's sort of a religious battle out there. We coined the term many years ago, and Sean, you used it on our conversation last week about paid customer advocacy versus earned customer advocacy. And I know there's proponents out there of both, and sometimes they can be used in conjunction. So I just wanted to kind of put that topic out there of, incentivization and things like that, and see where you guys stand on that kind of that spectrum from paid advocacy to earned advocacy, and any thoughts that you have on there, because again, I'm going to put a premise out there that bribery and extortion isn't always the best way to get customers to do something for you. So anybody want to start us off on that topic?
I can start. We don't pay.
Okay.
I don't think it's advocacy if you're paying. It's advertising.
Yeah.
In fact, we work with very large organizations that have policies that you cannot even gift. We cannot send like a gift card, just a thing. So they do it because they believe that they can help somebody else and that they had a good experience. And sometimes it's external, sometimes it's internal, but there is no exchange. In some cases, we do send like a little thank you card, but for the most part, it's it's completely voluntary. It's not paid.
And I assume that, because a lot of times the fear that people have is, my customer will never do anything unless we offer them this up front. And, my claim, and the behavioral psychologists or behavioral economists have proven that just builds a relationship, a transactional relationship, not a trusted relationship. And it tends to be one that conditions the customer to wait for the next reward to be offered, so that they judge it based on the value of the reward versus the ask, versus, doing something because of the relationship you have with them. So again, I know I have some very strong feelings sort of on one end of the spectrum, but again, there's lots of opinions, lots of ways of doing it. Anybody else want to, share how you're addressing that as it relates to, either incentives or motivations?
Yeah, from my perspective, I try to do everything we can from keeping it from feeling transactional. So there are moments where we want to reward or thank our customers for being such incredible advocates. We do offer the gift card for a G2 review. That's through the G2 program. It is an incentive, but it's a thank you for completing that review. That is a little bit more transactional. There are other situations like, speaking at our industry conference, we're going to be able, or, add an industry conference with us. We are going to comp your ticket. We might not pay for your travel. Sometimes we will pay for your travel so that you can join us, but you're also going to get such benefits from attending that conference, from being up on that stage, from getting to share your voice. So you can, I guess, pick and choose what you believe is a payment or a benefit. The other area that we have dabbled in is sales referrals. Not necessarily for the referral itself, we've dabbled with that, but also if the referral closes, they become a customer, how are we thanking the customer for that? So really thinking creatively, how can we make it a great experience all the way through, where they're not saying, well, I'm only doing that because you're paying me to, right? It's not transactional. They don't work for us, but they're doing it in a way that's going to elevate their voice, that's going to allow them to share their positive sentiment. And then, hey, if they get a perk out of it too, that's great. Our CSMs feel more comfortable with the ask, which is great, but we don't do it for every single advocacy event. I think we pick and choose what to monetize, what to reward, and how much to reward for based on the value of that moment.
That's great. And then Sean, I'm curious for you, since you used the term that I wrote about like 10 years ago, paid versus earned advocacy. How do you define that? Could you, because I didn't define it when I first threw it out there to ask you guys questions, but in your mind, I want to see how close it is to how I define it.
Yeah, I loved Julio's definition of its marketing when it's paid. I think that having spent a lot of time in the halls of the world's largest telecom companies, B2C transactions you don't typically find advocates in the B2C world. It's just not the same. T-Mobile has to offer you something for you to say something nice about them, right?
Yep.
Same with AT&T, same with Orange and Deutsche Telekom and Vodafone. Name the giant world telecom company, and you're not going to get advocates earned, right? Nobody goes out to the forum and says, hey, my calls were all great today and nothing dropped and I had fast data. It's like payroll, it's only complaints. So that's where I fall on the paid side, is that if you want to get those people, you're going to have to pay them, and it is really just advertising. But then I think there's 3 more levels of that. There's earned, which we've been talking a lot about. There's rewarded advocacy, right? Which Brittany hit on, that we're going to do some kind of a spontaneous reward that they don't expect, and that helps promote advocacy. But then I think there's one more, and it's kind of nefarious, but not really. And I call it conceited advocacy. And I came upon this definition when COVID struck, because lots of customers wanted concessions. They wanted you to knock down their costs. They wanted you to split out their payments. They wanted some concessions because the entire economy was starting to contract. And within those concessions, we decided to add advocacy requirements. So if we do this for you, you're going to do this for us. So it was almost a carrot and stick reciprocity. But what was interesting is that every single customer agreed to that and then followed through on it, because they viewed our working with them on the concession as far more valuable than the coming out publicly and saying how much they loved us or how great we were coming and helping us. So I think there is that side of it as well, that you can also put advocacy requirements into some contractual obligations, as long as, to Julio's point in the beginning, you're delivering value. If you're not delivering value, then you're going to get the smirky advocate, right? The one that everyone can tell really isn't that into it. So I think there is the paid versus earned versus rewarded versus conceded.
Right. And I haven't heard the conceded one, but I understand the concept, because I've found that, you know, we've had to make some concessions sometimes because our customer is just in a bind, right? And then when we make that concession, you've like saved their butt, and they're so appreciative and think of you as such a partner. I mean, you're an amazing partner for this concession, as opposed to thinking like, oh, I got a victory. I got you to cave, right? So,
and if you go back to
thing?
if you go back to the beginning where we said one out of 5 customers brings in a new customer. If I'm going to do a conceded piece of advocacy and now I've got 2 customers bringing in a customer, I've more than paid for that concession.
Right. Such a great point. And Dana, I know you've got a lot of opinions here, as including surprise and delight. Can you give us some? You've told me a few stories in the past about how effective that is, and I don't know if that's it's sort of the thanking, showing the appreciation after the fact and how powerful it can be.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of alluded to it on before of it's not anything upfront. I'm never upfront asking, can you do this for me and I'll give you this, but we track not only what our advocates and our we call them rock stars, want to do with us, what acts of advocacy, but what they like. So I pay attention who has a pet, who has a kid at home. Do they like wine? Are they a beer drinker? So we track those type of things as well too. So then when that webinar comes around or when that referral call happens, I can send a Chewy gift card over to them. And I actually had one. She became a customer, not because of this, but she became a customer. It impacted her. One of her pets was sick at home. She's like, you have no idea how important that gift card came at this time, because I needed to get some additional things. And she told me about the experience she used with Chewy. So I'm like, oh, I'll give that as the thank you. So it's just paying attention, again, listening to your customers and making it about them and personal to them with that surprise and delight. It's not the standard, here's your Amazon card. I mean, some people would, I think, value that. I love anything from Amazon, but just taking it a step further and making it personalized with that surprise and delight definitely builds that relationship piece for your advocates, and they remember it.
Yeah, so that's such a good point too, because when I was running my Forrester Frontlines program at Forrester, that we were same thing. We had customers that wanted to do things for us, and one time we had a customer that had taken a reference call that got us a really large deal, a 7-figure deal. And the CEO, I mean, it got to the CEO's desk that this had happened, of course, because I was on the same floor as him and I told him. And so that we had this advocate that did this for us, and the CEO sent a personal email thanking them for that. And that customer for the next year brought that up with me 4 or 5 times, how impactful that personal email from the CEO was. It was more valuable than a case of wine or anything else I could have bought that person. So that it's just such a thing. So keep in mind, people, it doesn't have to be monetary, right? And the fact, I love, Dana, the fact that you know something about people. So if it is something physical, or even if it's like a concert ticket because they love Taylor Swift, something like that, it's just incredible. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions here. And
Jeff, I wanted to add one point to that.
Go ahead.
I have found that the most valuable thing that I, as a vendor, can provide my customer to get them excited about the reciprocity is a peer-to-peer interaction with somebody that's at one of our customers. So if my executive sponsor is a CIO, connecting her with another CIO is the most valuable thing I can do. And that is the thing that builds an incredible amount of trust, which is, obviously one of the most important things when it comes to this power of persuasion and influence that Cialdini talks about. So It's a free thing. And everybody out there on the call, this is something you can go implement tomorrow for free. And you're going to generate incredible amounts of goodwill with that.
Yes.
And that's a part of the advocacy program. I would say it's not just, it's the two-way exchange of value again. It's, do you want to do peer-to-peer networking? So find a platform, spin up a Slack, have them join webinars. There's tons of different free portals where they can join in things. But yes, totally agree with you, Sean. That's huge. People want to talk to each other and learn from each other. So get a format for them to do that. Bring it together. Don't make it a selling aspect. Make it a networking aspect.
Mm-hmm. And so Eugene, I see you posted an interesting comment here, an interesting experience you had during COVID. Can we entice you to come off mute and give us a little color around this situation?
Sure. Hang on a second. I'll even turn on. There we go. So first of all, I'm a partner in a venture capital firm. We have around 40 portfolio companies. And we use, I'll say 3 or 4 different branding companies and other, I'll call them customer service companies for our portfolio companies. One of those companies, which is based in Boston, started offering this type of advocacy that you're talking about. And in a couple of cases, they assumed they had a much better relationship with the portfolio company than they did. They offered them a pretty nice discount on one of their services. It was relating to paid engagements at conferences. And they basically, offered a really nice discount and did it in such a way that it really bothered us at the venture firm. And we looked at them and I said, are there options to this vendor? And they said, absolutely. We use actually 2 vendors. And this particular vendor was dropped. We weren't giving them references. We weren't going to help them land business. And we didn't like the way they went around it. So if you're going to ask for this type of advocacy, make sure you have a really good relationship with that client, because otherwise it's going to go bad.
Right. Yeah, and thanks, Eugene, because that's so important to why we even wanted to do this, cover this topic today, was because of the fact that customer success people should be the ones that have that best purview into what is that relationship, what is their level of success, what is their level of value that they're getting. A much better view than the customer marketing or advocacy person does, who's tends to think in a more of one-to-many type role or program approach, right? So that's a great insight. Thank you for that.
We had another
Okay,
question in the Q&A area.
Okay, from AJ from the UK, strict rules around public sector government employees accepting gifts. Yeah, and same thing around rules around like in the US, regulated industries, oftentimes they can't go on the record. They can't say anything. They can't give you shill for you. They can't give you testimonials or endorsements. How about for the panel? Has anybody dealt with either government restrictions, regulated industry restrictions, either on accepting gifts or performing acts of advocacy, or both?
So we deal with that a good amount. And there's, in terms of just like the thank you, what we do is we plant trees on their behalf. That's usually what we do. It's just something that we do to just recognize and thank them for a nice thing that they did for us when they cannot take a gift card or anything like that. That works fairly well. And then in instances where usually the legal teams are like, not allowing for somebody to speak publicly, what we usually do is we sometimes blind it as well. We refer to that company as within the sector. Obviously, it's not as good. But whenever there is an instance where somebody cannot share something publicly, but they would like to, we usually just refer to it in a leading telecommunications company or something along those lines, instead of utilizing the name.
Right. So it's some semi-anonymized piece of testimony, right? Yeah. Brittany, I know your head was nodding. It sounds like you've had some experience here too.
Yeah, we do the same, whether it's an anonymized option. We also offer, for example, with the referrals, if you get a $200 gift card, we'll make a $200 donation to the charity of your choosing. So people also resonate with that. I love the idea of planting a tree on their behalf, though. I think that's really awesome.
Really?
Yeah, one of the tactics that I've used is I've had a executive bridge to that person's manager and say what a great job they're doing. Right.
And so tell us more. So what's the impact of that? I can
So
only imagine, but I want to hear it.
Yeah, well, it's the thank you for being such a wonderful customer. And it's the elevating of that person in their manager's eyes, managing up without having to manage up, about how great they're doing and what value they're getting out of the solution. So coming from somebody above them across to their boss is a great way to pump them up and stay out of the whole, gift in kind conversation.
Yeah. And let me just give an example too, that a lot of times when people say no, it's because I can't go public. Either I work for the government, I work in pharmaceuticals or whatever. So I had a situation like this at Forrester when I was running my program, where it was actually big software company in Redmond, Washington, wouldn't allow us to say that they were a client, but we had so much upsell potential within that one client that we were actually having advocates be advocates for us within their own company. And so the people that were making, power users of Forrester's services, they would share their experiences, the types of initiatives that they were doing better with Forrester's help. We would help them package it up into this little video asset that they could then send in a way that they're bragging to all their colleagues across other areas of big company in Redmond, Washington, and so ended up tripling the annual contract value of that account in 1 year by advocating within their company. And it was well worth it, right? Because again, we went from like 600K to 1.8 million, and so there was a huge ROI, even though we couldn't use them publicly. So not everything has to be public, and oftentimes, if you give customers that flexibility in the permission level, there may be certain things that they say that, yes, you can use this public because it's me sharing an experience or an opinion. But over here, no, where I'm talking about, something that might be confidential, we encounter that a lot because we have clients that are security technology vendors. And right, and so their customers can't give away any of what their tricks and techniques that they're using because they don't want the bad guys to know. So yeah, so there's tons of ways around that, and I love hearing what you guys have done there. Dana, I know we just a minute left. Did you have anything on the that side? That's
No, I just wanted to touch upon, AJ had another question about advocating customer advocacy should happen at the start of any relationship or start of the sales process. I think it's part of a sales differentiator. We bring it up in the sales cycle as part of the onboarding, the enablement, the training, the value you get is joining the Rockstar program, whatever the name of your program is, what other customers are doing, who they are. It's a huge sales differentiator in this role and in the role I was in prior, that sales reps loved being able to showcase, like, we have this advocacy program. Here are some of the customers who are in it. Here's what they're doing with it. And they may even be interacting with some of these rock stars if there's a reference call that ends up happening, or they're viewing a recorded reference. So it definitely should come up in the sales process and make it a sales differentiator, because it's something you may be doing that your competitors aren't. So.
all right. I know we're just at the top of the hour here. Does anybody have any parting thoughts or advice for their peers on the panel?
If there's any, we'll be sharing this recording, and if there's any other questions, I may just start up we can put it in the general Customer X channel, but we could start up a CS specific channel too, if there's any other topics of CS and advocacy talks that we wanted to follow up on some of this. Feel free to start your conversations there too.
Yes, and I do feel like we could have gone so much deeper into any of these topics that we
This is
talked
part
about.
one.
I mean, we
This
were
is part
basically
one.
scratching the surface, but again, we're going to be jumping into all of them at Customer X Con, and just stay subscribed to the Customer X channel, because we'll be doing more of these things. In fact, maybe maybe we do some follow-ups where we're drilling into just some of the areas like the motivation and incentivization, and dig deeper with lots of examples around that. So stay tuned. And so I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and especially thanking our panelists for these amazing insights that you shared. And hopefully it provided a lot of inspiration for the folks that are on the call that are aspiring to play a much bigger role themselves. All right, so with that, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.